look at profitability, there's the two biggest levers are really pricing and ad spend, right? So
Oh,
you can price your product cheap and have lower ad spend and make the same amount as having a price that's expensive, but you got to pump the ad spend, right? So it's kind of a fine balance between the two and kind of seeing, can I lower ad spend here but keep pricing the same? Can I lower pricing and then lower ad spend to make up for that, right?
Welcome to the Ecomm Breakthrough Podcast. Are you ready to unlock the full potential and growth in your business? You've already crossed 7 figures in sales, but the challenge is knowing how to take your business to the next level.
welcome to the Ecomm Breakthrough Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hadley, where I interview the top business leaders in e-commerce. Past guests include Kevin King, Aaron Cordovez, and Michael E. Gerber, author of The E-Myth. Today on the Ecomm Breakthrough Podcast, I'm excited to welcome Brandon Furman. He is a seasoned Amazon entrepreneur. He is the co-founder of Innovate, and he is the driving force behind a successful kitchenware brand. With years of experience building and scaling e-commerce businesses, Brandon brings a unique perspective shaped by both his entrepreneurial journey and his background as an attorney. Today, we're going to be diving into his business. What is he doing with the challenges we're all faced with tariffs and Amazon fees and increasing competition? He's going to be sharing his journey and his tips and strategies he's implementing in his business today. So with that introduction, welcome to the show, Brandon.
Hi, great to be here.
Brandon, so AMZ Innovate. This is, it's no longer AMZ Innovate. It's just Innovate.
Yes.
But this is your 7th year. Tell me more about it. And how did you get into that? Because that's originally where you and I met. And I've loved that conference you guys put together.
Yeah, so it all started years ago, about 10 years ago. Jared Orkin, who's one of my partners on the conference, started this meetup group in New York City. And I also lived in New York City at the time and was just starting to sell online. I went to the first one and there was like 4 people there. And we were just trying to learn how to sell, what to do, what FBA was. And then the next one I went to had like 10, and Jared and I started running it together because I had nothing else better to do. And then it was 20 and then 50. And then, it just kept growing. And at some point, Jared said, "Do you want to put on a conference?" And I was like, sure. And we had no experience doing it. And we did it anyway. And the first one had like 120 people, and it's just grown and grown and grown. And now here we are 7 years later, and we're over, 700 attendees last year and growing even more. As sellers, for us, like, I think we put on the event that we want to see, something that's like unique, something that really resonates with us as sellers, and not like a lot of other events where it's a lot of like service providers or people who don't really know e-commerce. We really, know e-commerce, and we really, put on the show that we think is the best.
Love it. No, I think the speakers that you guys bring to the table, I mean, you had the guys from Hexclad there, you have David Guillaume with Mary Ruth's, like, you're bringing in heavy hitters. And with that comes like just a wealth of knowledge that everybody can learn from. So, and the networking is hands down top notch. So
yeah, absolutely. All of our friends end up speaking or coming, or it's a great event.
Yeah. Love what you guys are doing there.
Thank you.
Let's also talk about your brand. So tell me about your kitchenware brand. How long have you been on Amazon? Walk me through kind of your journey there.
Yeah, so I originally started on Amazon years ago. I was selling kids' furniture, actually, like way back in the day. Just kind of like, it was kind of more of an experimentation before there even was like an FBA. I didn't even know what I was doing. And then, I had sold oil paintings online for years and did some SEO consultation. Didn't go well because Google changed their algorithm and everything kind of like went to dust that I was working on. Went to law school and then started selling my books on Amazon. And someone I knew from the SEO world messaged me about like, FBA, and I just kind of clicked with me. I was like, I know the China side, I know how to do this, and I just jumped right into it about 10 years ago, selling kitchenware. And at the time we lived in New York City and had a very small apartment, and my wife loved to cook, and it just seemed like the natural progression.
I love it. Yeah. Well, all of us have dabbled around on Amazon. That was like our first like experience of like trying to sell something random on Amazon. For me, it was like my college textbooks. Like that was like
exactly. That's what I did.
Right?
Yeah. I was making more money than the law school was giving me on the textbooks. Yeah.
Yeah. Same here. Yeah. We did the same thing. My wife would get a scholarship that gave her like, that would purchase all of her books brand new. And I was like, this is awesome. We're going to make so much money just from the book sales. So love it. All right. Well, Brandon, talk to me about right now. So the audience, we have 7, 8-figure audience listeners, right? A lot of people are kind of like, this year, 2025 has been a roller coaster year with tariffs and FBA fees and just increased competition on Amazon. So talk to me about your business. Talk to me about where you guys are currently standing and what are the things that you're doing in your brand to survive what I consider like this is the purge, and only the strong will survive when we come out of this.
Yeah, it's been tough. It's really been hard. I've had a couple of really hard months, probably, some of the toughest months since I've even started, 10 years ago. And it's just been, one thing after another, like you were saying, with tariffs and fees and inventory fees, right? And, it makes it tough when, you don't estimate demand properly and suddenly you're hit with overstock fees, or then you sell too much of something and then you're not making the money you should. So it's been really a difficult year for me, especially with the tariffs too. Something that has helped me, I would say, is, because I'm international, I sell in Europe, I sell in Canada, that I've been able to place some orders as almost hedges and tell the factories like, we'll sell this inventory. Whether it's going to go to the US when it's ready, I don't know. Whether we're going to pick it up right away, I don't know. But at least we have an outlet so we can confidently say like, okay, we're going to sell this in Europe at some point, right? And I think that's been helpful along the way. And also really just lately, we've been really working to be mindful of fees and realizing that, maybe we can't compete in some ways at the levels we had before, dialing back ad spend, dialing back inventory orders, things like that, where it's like, what we need to kind of canceling certain products that maybe just aren't profitable anymore and really kind of taking it back to square one in those regards. So that's certainly been helpful. And then the main thing that I would say that we always do is whenever we're in trouble, financially or whatever, or, we go in and we strip the listings down to the studs, and basically it's not performing as well as it should. And we do keyword research again. We get all the images done again. We look at reviews. We price out things with our factories, right? Sometimes things creep up. Sometimes we can get lower prices. Really, everything we can do to be successful again, almost as if we're starting at square one. And by the time we're done with that, usually, we're kind of successful. So like at this point, I would say this month has been like the best month we've had since February. And like the last couple have been terrible, but not great. But we're kind of growing back again, and like about 60% of our products are actually up in the month of August year over year, which is great. The other 40% not so much, but we're making progress. We're getting there. So it's good to be resilient. It's good to work hard and really try to be successful coming back from that.
Yeah, totally agree. I think the resilience thing is very overlooked oftentimes, but so you're saying you're up 60% of your products are up year over year. Why is that? Are you just attributing that to optimization? Is it main images? Is it the SEO? What would you say, like, if you could say like one thing, right? What was the one key optimization that you've made, or was it a series?
I think it's everything. I mean, I think Amazon right now is, it can be death by 1,000 cuts, right? And that comes with fees, and that comes with marketing and your listings, right? And I think it's easy to get complacent when things are working and not change things. And like, I'm guilty of that. And I think like, it almost makes sense. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But when it is broke, really go in and examine everything from square one, right? So, we've done things like lightning deals, work with our pricing, redoing our listings, really, again, everything we can think of that could move the needle in some way. We've worked to try to fix, right? So I can't say there's any one thing. Maybe the images are probably the biggest thing, because like that's what really I think drives most sales compared to anything else.
Yeah, it seems like that's been the case like through multiple podcast interviews that I've done. Like, it seems like that main image is honestly like the number one optimization strategy that you can implement.
I mean, not just main image, but all images really, right? Like making sure you're telling your story as customers see the product, right? And you can pull up, right, when things were less competitive, right? Like if you had the same images from like 2016, for example, right? Mine are completely different now, right? Because the level of competition has leveled up so much. So you go in there and you can see what everyone else is doing, what stories they're telling, what reviews are saying, right? And you might want to change like image 2 to feature something else, right? A different benefit to a customer that maybe wasn't as important years ago, or maybe you didn't need that differentiation because like you were the only one doing that kind of thing, where now it's like, okay, our product is different than these guys because of X, right? So there's always things that you can do, and like it changes, and as your competition changes, which it does constantly, your image stack needs to change as well.
Yeah. What have you done on the pricing side, or what are you seeing, right, with the impact of tariffs?
Mm-hmm.
Are you raising your prices, or have you had to even decrease prices just based on competition and losing market share? Tell me what you've seen on the pricing side of things.
So it's been a lot of different things. So I will say, I kind of saw a lot of this coming, and decided last year to place a really big bet for Q4, with the idea being that like if it doesn't sell, which I wasn't expecting it to sell, but like, giving myself leeway to be like, if this doesn't sell, we have through Chinese New Year, and, tariffs may be coming, and things may be happening. So I took big bets. So I was not as affected earlier on as some companies were, because I still had old inventory that I was still working through. And now I'm at a point where like, okay, things are different, but I had a lot that kind of carried me through those tough months. Right. So that was a good move on my part. Inventory wise, I still had to pay a lot for storage, so maybe it didn't work out as well as I was hoping, but it was a hedge. In terms of like raising prices, lowering prices, I've kind of come in being a little smarter about prices and working to make sure that I've got variations on most products that I can kind of upcharge for. Right. And this is Aaron. I know you mentioned Aaron was on your podcast. I know he kind of pioneered this, and he's in the kitchenware space, right? But making sure that I've got variations where I can kind of upsell those, and kind of having my main product be maybe lower price to kind of bring them into the listing. So I've been doing a lot of that, I would say. But really, it's been about testing pricing along the way as much as I can. In some cases, I've had to lower. In some cases, I've raised. But I kind of view, when you look at profitability, there's the two biggest levers are really pricing and ad spend, right? So you can price your product cheap and have lower ad spend and make the same amount as having a price that's expensive, but you got to pump the ad spend, right? So it's kind of a fine balance between the two, and kind of seeing, can I lower ad spend here but keep pricing the same? Can I lower pricing and then lower ad spend to make up for that, right? So it's kind of, you're kind of moving the needle on both ends on that.
Yeah, I remember we've had a couple products where we reduced the price by over 50%, and we're like, well, if we do this, we're not going to be able to spend money on PPC, but let's see what happens organically.
Exactly. Right.
And like overnight, we shot up to like number 1, number 2, number 3, just on the first page. Whereas like we haven't been able to touch the first 3 spots. And so I think like definitely like pricing plays a big part in Amazon's algorithm. We don't know how, but it does, because you're right. Like it is a balance of like, well, how much PPC spend do you want to have versus do you want to just have like the lowest price in the market? How have you kind of like navigated that? Because it doesn't seem like your strategy is like, no, I'm the low price leader across the board. Yeah. Seems like maybe for some products I might need to be, but other products I'm not. So like, what's your strategy behind that for your brand?
It's really mostly on a product by product basis, right? If the market can afford me to raise my prices, I'll raise them. If the market can't, then I won't. That's basically what it comes down to, right? And if the product is not profitable enough, I cut it. If it is, then I keep it, right? It's kind of as basic as that, right? And a lot of times if I have a lot of variations and it's a really well-selling product, I kind of usually end up being the lower price on the main variation, with the other ones being higher. Because I'm in kitchenware, I was really affected when they took away the small and light program. Right, a lot of my products are in that $9.99 range, where like you're in this weird variable time where if you're $9.99 or less, your fulfillment fees are less than they are if they're $10.99, or up to like basically, it doesn't really make sense until you get to like $11.99, right? So like it doesn't make sense to price any products at 11. So in some ways I'm kind of sometimes caught in that that middle area where it's like, okay, how do I make this work? These have to be $11.99. This should be $9.99. I can't be at 10, or it's definitely an art, but it's kind of also being cognizant of what those fees are too.
Yeah. So what's your team look like in order to execute this? Like, are you doing this just yourself, or how many team members do you have to help
So
you run
yeah,
the
so
brand?
I love having a really small team. So I have there's a sourcing team that I use out of China that handles everything on that end. And then I have a PPC agency that I use that handles everything on that end that is great. And then I have a VA that handles everything else in the middle. And then I kind of just do big picture stuff. So that's it. That's the team. So, it's great in that, we have Slack channels set up with both teams, and, they're very communicative and responsive. So it's almost like they're, part of our company, but they're not, right? But it makes it easy for us to kind of, focus on what we can do best, or at least what I can do best on my end. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So you're very lean.
Very lean, yeah. And that's part of what's helped me survive, downturns, and survived when things have been difficult, is that, like, I'm as lean as I possibly can be. And I don't like having big teams. I've had them in the past. It's tough, but, like, it makes it easier when, it's as lean as possible.
So do you mind talking about who your PPC agency is and what you've done for PPC? Because I think that is a pain point for most sellers, where it seems like that lots of people have very different experiences with different PPC agencies. I'm sure you've been around the block.
Yes.
Since you've been in the business for so long. So what have you seen, both the good and the bad, from PPC agencies, which led you to who you're with today?
So I've did it myself for a while, and, I realized that's not my core competency, and it's something that I'm not great at. And then, I've gone to other agencies. I won't badmouth any of them, but, a lot of them seem to not be so responsive to really be focused on, like, what the automation of it is, right? Without regards to, like, the big picture. And a lot of them, this is always one of my biggest, is they don't focus on the creative at this point, right? When PPC first started, it was PPC, right? You're right, paying per click, and you bid on the keyword, and that's that, and it's very easy to automate that. But now there's so many opportunities for creative, for video ads, right? For different things that you can be doing that can move the needle just based on the quality of what you're producing, right? And a lot of agencies don't really focus enough on that, in my opinion, and it's easy to get lost in the shuffle. So, my current agency, so I use Insider's agency, who've been tremendous. But, we really focus on a lot of that stuff, and really thinking outside the box as much as we can, and being as responsive as we can, right? The main metric that we use is tacos, right? Looking at overall spend for sale, like a halo effect, versus, like, ACoS on any particular product or keyword. So it kind of helps to kind of look at the big picture each month as we go forward.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I love that approach. That was always my challenge with anybody that we worked with on the PPC side of things. Is this is not just a black box that you stick over in the corner and then you just optimize, let a computer optimize it. It's
right.
You need to take all the different variables into context, which is, what if you are trying to price your product low right now? Well, then you obviously want to pull back your PPC spend.
Right.
What if you're trying to increase your price? Well, maybe you want to juice your PPC a little bit more. And there's so many different factors with that, in addition to, like, the amount of creative that I think is now needed in the Amazon ad space to really, like, take full advantage. I think you need somebody that is almost like a part of your team, in a way, that are willing to, like, dive into those details and discuss, like, images, and discuss, like, what you're doing with your price and your overall ranking. Is that what you're doing with your agent?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's times that I'll come to them and I'll say, like, listen, we're trying to rank for X, Y, and Z terms, right? We ran a deal and we've moved up and we're trying to really rank for this. So let's push on these keywords with PPC spend. And, I don't care what we're spending on them. We're just trying to rank right now. And then there's other times where I'm like, listen, we're trying to get more profitable on this term. We're going to dial things back. Our ranking is pretty good, but we just need to be more profitable to keep this product going, right? So, every month we go through every product that we run and really look, like, holistically at it, and kind of, like, look at it and see. And then we also communicate throughout the month as well, right? But we kind of, we really look through and try to figure out a plan for each product in each marketplace.
Yeah. What are you doing on the sourcing side of things then? Have you, when tariffs rolled out initially back in April, and they're still in limbo as of today, right? They just perpetually
next 90-day pause
extended.
Yeah.
What's been your approach that way? Have you tried to diversify and maybe bring stuff into the US or gone to other countries? What's been
Yeah.
your approach, and where do you see the puck moving over the next 18 months for sellers?
Yeah, so it's really tough when the tariffs first hit and they were crazy high. I was in a good place inventory wise that I didn't have to like really ever pay that. So that worked out okay for me. But we started looking overseas to see what could be done, what could be done at what price, and it seemed like the prices are higher and the infrastructure isn't necessarily there in some countries, right? But it is doable. So, we definitely have a couple on the back burner. And now that the tariffs are lower, it's kind of at a point where it's like, at these current tariffs, China is still cheaper, but not necessarily by much, but it is. So we've kind of decided to stick with that, with the idea being that some factories have operations both in China and in other countries.
Yeah.
And if we can prioritize those and switch to those, it kind of makes it easy to like to switch on and switch off if we need to at that time. So that's kind of where we've ended up, is like one, going and finding some of those factories that do that and getting sample. I mean, the other thing too is like this process can take a long time, right? Getting, moving your product over, getting the sample, finding how long it's just going to cost, negotiating, right? This is months, right? So, we're still in the thick of it on several of our products. But knowing that like, okay, we've got an option here if we need it. So I'm still with like all my current factories, but we have a couple options if things were to change back again.
Okay. So you have started to hedge your bets, but they're more kind of like backup plans.
Yeah, exactly. That's
point.
exactly where I would say I am. And where things are headed in 18 months, I mean, I don't think anybody knows the answer to that. What I would say is I think that there's just too much trade between the US and China for things not to resolve themselves somewhat amicably, to the point where it's going to be like still probably the primary place to manufacture. That's my personal opinion. But again, sentiments have gone really, poor towards China for some time. So I could be very wrong about that.
Yeah, we never know.
You never know, right?
Right. What else have you done this year to kind of diversify yourself, maybe off of Amazon? Do you see that as a good strategy for sellers it's time to start looking for something else? Or do you think like, no, actually double down on Amazon and let the weak ones die, so to speak?
I think kind of both. So what I would say is that, first of all, it's never been easier to expand to other channels outside of Amazon, right? I mean, most channels now. So I was telling you about how Walmart, we've been on Walmart for a while, but haven't given the channel much notice. But then Vico has an integration now with Walmart that will sync to your FBA inventory. And Walmart's okay with this for the first time, and it'll ship in a blank box. It won't use Amazon shipping. So, right. So all these things happen that now suddenly you can sell on Walmart using your Amazon inventory. Previously, we just kind of sent like, at random more or less, or if we have a couple extra boxes, or right, we'll send things here and there. But now we can suddenly have all our inventory on Amazon, on Walmart, and our sales are exploding. And this has only been for us a couple of weeks now, right? And it really requires almost no extra work once it's set up. So this is great to start right here. The other things are, right, it's very easy to pull things into Shopify, right? Shopify at this point is like a Swiss Army knife to all these outside channels. So if you have your own website, you can be on Shein, you can be on Temu, you can be on TikTok, you can be on, right? There's tons of channels there that you can suddenly start selling on, right? So it's never been easier to just be like, okay, I'm going to spend some time setting up these channels, set it and forget it, not really think about it much, and then suddenly have a decent amount of outside sales coming in. So to me, I think, that one is like, okay, it's worth it to do that, to get those sales, to really set up that diversification. And even if that's only like 10% of your sales outside of Amazon, like to start, it still helps a lot to really get that going, right? And it's never been easier for that. The other thing is with Amazon is they now have AWD. So you can now take your master cartons and send those in there before they go to FBA, and you can use that to sell to retail and to sell to a bunch of other places, right? So being on a place like Fair and being in anywhere you want, where that's also very easy to accomplish. So to me, I feel like it's never been easier to sell off Amazon, at least in some regard. Whether that's going to be a huge percentage of your channel, like, that's a different question. For me, it hasn't been, but it's growing, and like I like having that number there. Other than that, I feel like, Amazon, it's been a tough year for a lot of people. So in some ways, Amazon's gotten less competitive, and in some ways, the sales aren't as much. They've turned down their Google ads and things like that, where maybe the sales coming in aren't what they were. But, I still think it's worth fighting for that and really focusing most of your time on that. Like if you're doing 80-20, right? 80% would definitely be Amazon, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I would really still focus on that.
Yeah, I think it's good words of wisdom there. What have you done? So I'm surprised to hear that like you've just exploded, so to speak, on Walmart, relatively speaking to the previous amount of sales that
I
you've
mean, it
had
was
there.
minuscule. Yeah.
Because that's been our journey as well. We were one of the first people on
Yeah.
Walmart.com, and Walmart has just continued to struggle after struggle.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the difference? Did you come out with better SEO, or is it just like faster shipping?
It's literally just having that integration in place. I've done literally nothing else with that. Like, I mean, and now we're going to start doing a little bit more here and there. There's definitely some things we want to do, but like I've put no time into the platform, and literally all I did was connect it with the Amazon store and keep the pricing the same, and like that's it. So, I wish I could say that there was some genius on my part, but really it's just having inventory for sale that I can sell, right? And I think part of it too is that Walmart, spends money on Google ads still. Amazon doesn't. So it could be that just my products are starting to take over in like the search algorithm on Google that used to be there for Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah. Really good perspective. Love that. So Brandon, what does your game plan look like for your own brand as you look into 2026 now? Like what things are you going to be focusing on for your brand? Is it new product launches? Is it a main focus of diversifying sales channels? What do you think you're going to be doubling down on?
Yeah, I think it's really new product launches is really what moves the needle the most. So I think that's what I'm going to focus on. Hopefully, again, this year it's been tough. I've been behind the curve. Cash flow has been an issue. So I have a backlog of products that I'm excited to launch. I just don't have them launched yet. I don't have necessarily the cash flow for it. So yeah, that's what I'm really excited for right now.
How do you come up with your product ideas? And because again, that truly is like the number one lever for any Amazon based brand owner is like, you want growth, launch more products. So are you still using like the Helium 10s, the Jungle Scouts to find products?
A little bit. Yeah. I mean, the main thing with a product to me is there has to be demand, right? In some way for it. So I will use it, not necessarily as much as before. I've been selling kitchenware for 10 years. I've got a pretty decent sense of the market. But what I like to do is like try to go for base hits. I think a lot of sellers go for like home runs, grand slams, launching like the thing with like the highest keyword volume, right? I like to take like a niche that's got good runway and then maybe go a little bit more micro on it because it's easier to rank for that. And kind of going with that and going with something that maybe no one's really doing yet and trying to rank for that term. And then knowing that like, my eventual goal is to kind of climb the summit to the higher keyword, but I'm usually not the guy that's like going for like, fish oil or whatever, like the number one term in the category, right? So that's kind of how I kind of prioritize that. I also go to the Canton Fair every year, every couple years, and a lot of times I'll just see products there where I'll be like, that's the thing we got to buy, right? And kind of know intuitively, just because I know the market at this point, what's going on.
Love that. What makes a product successful when you launch it on Amazon? Maybe do you have any case studies of like, hey, here's a time where we crushed it with our launch, and then here's a time where we've had some flops. What do you feel like the difference has been in those?
The difference to me, well, first of all, is getting those early reviews and having them be positive, right? Nothing kills a product more than having negative reviews when you're launching. Like if you get negative reviews, it's like you're done, right? And I had a product where, it was like a cheap product that I kind of like didn't put enough time or effort into, and like I just wasn't focused on it because I was like, oh, these are cheap, right? And it was like, okay, let's try it, and then it bombed completely and the reviews were bad, and it was like that's the end of the product, and like there's nothing you can do to recover from that. I don't care how good you are at launching, that product will never be successful, right? What is successful to me is usually like when you're starting to run it and you get those good reviews come in and you're getting sales, and like sales are kind of coming and you're not really sure where they're coming from or why they're even happening, right? And that can definitely happen, and like that to me is like, okay, that's a grand slam, like initially when you're starting to get those early sales, right? right? And sometimes, you're sending things out to your list or your team, you're doing things to like get, sales or get reviews, all white hat, of course, but like you're doing those things and they're coming in and you're like, okay, this is good. But then you turn that off and it's like, oh, there's nothing there outside of what I'm doing. That's different than like when they're kind of coming in organically.
Mm. Have you ever had to do much with like external traffic for your launches, or have you done everything with just like PPC?
I mean, we have a list, and a lot of times we'll tell the list, hey, we're launching this product. We'll publicize it on like some of the socials, things like that. I don't know how much it moves the needle, but it definitely helps a little bit. We do focus primarily on PPC once we have those initial reviews in.
And then it sounds like your strategy on PPC is like just long tail keywords to begin with.
Yeah.
And then you guys ramp that up. Like, what's kind of like, do you go with like, hey, 7 long tail keywords? Do you have a system to your madness, or is it just like, hey, as many long tail keywords as we find for the
it depends. Yeah, it depends on the product. Like my goal is like there should be like 3 or 4 that I'm like, this is a no-brainer that we can rank number 1 for. And like, these are not like huge volume keywords, but these are keywords that are going to like, maybe they're making like 30 sales a month or something, 50 sales a month, right? Nothing too crazy, but stuff that nobody's really gone after, right? But we can launch and probably be at number 1 relatively quickly, because we're also like kind of geared for those terms, right? But knowing that like, okay, here are these other keywords that like down the road we want to rank for. Maybe this one is like, 300, 500 sales a month. Okay, that's where our next goal is. And we'll kind of work towards that goal and kind of go from there. But really, really targeting those really low volume terms that nobody's really given second thought to.
Yeah. I think that's what I've heard is, again, Matt Altman shared that strategy with us as well, is like, just start with really long tail keywords and then you ramp them up to where you can get to the bigger keywords.
Yeah, exactly.
Later on.
I mean, if you're in a category, even if it's not that competitive, right, and you're there with 30 reviews and someone else has like 5,000 reviews, right, and they're 4.5 stars and you're 4.5 stars, and like maybe they'll pick your product because they like it, but generally speaking, they're not going to go in there and be like, oh, we're going to go with this product over that one for any reason, unless the price is really competitive, the product is really good, right? So like, you've got to give them that reason, which is tough, which you can do, but like ideally you want to kind of just be the best thing that's going to rank for another term where it's like, it's almost no contest because you're just like the product for that keyword.
Yeah.
Right.
And how differentiated are your products, right? Are you able to get design patents? Are you able to get copyright?
Yeah, I mean, it depends, right? Certain ones we absolutely are, right? We definitely can get design patents or copyright, things like that. So yeah, we definitely can be differentiated. I think at this point you need to be. Some of my earlier products weren't that differentiated and they still sell well, but like I wouldn't launch a product now that's not that differentiated. I'm pulling actually this up on my screen, right? So this one of my terms that I went for on one of my latest products was keyword sales last 4 weeks was 38. Right, and we're ranked number 1, and another one in that one is 44. We're ranked number 1, right? So like these are not terms that have a ton of sales, but they're the ones that we're just like, no, we're clearly the best here.
Love that. Yeah, love that strategy. So how do you differentiate yourself then, especially like as it gets more competitive? Are you the one who just has to think creatively, like how to stand out in the market? Is it primarily colors? Are you thinking, do you survey your audience? What do you do to help yourself stand out?
So I guess I would say there's a couple of ways, right? So first of all, I feel like I know the niche pretty well. So I kind of feel like I've got maybe a sixth sense a little bit for what I think is going to be successful. But it doesn't necessarily mean that like I know what I'm doing. It's just like I think this is a good idea for a product. So we'll dig in and we'll try to find molds. We'll try to find products that like really are unique, that aren't sold in the marketplace, maybe stuff that's new. Sometimes our suppliers come to us and they're just like, hey, I got this thing for you. What do you think? And then we'll try to figure out how we can put our own spin on it to make it something that's unique, that no one else is doing, that no one else can do, right? But really, once we do that, before we even, maybe we'll get a sample, but before we order the product, we'll try to create a master, like a hero image for it. And using some of those split testing softwares like Celometrics or IntelliV, we'll run it against the competitors and see how we're doing. And sometimes if we see something online that already exists, we'll do that anyway and just kind of compare them, right? But we want to like kind of run those tests if we can. and be like, okay, how do you like this compared to this? And if they say yes, then I know we're on the right track, right? And sometimes I'll look at the feedback and be like, okay, this is interesting. We want to change this. Oh, they want this. They think this is better. And you can kind of change the product based on what customers think before you've even designed it. Other times we'll look at the feedback and be like, this is stupid. Like, there's nothing here that, like, I know why they voted for the other product. I still like mine. And we've been successful doing that too. But kind of take it or leave it, but kind of knowing where they're coming from when they give that feedback. So I would say that's probably the first thing that we do. And it kind of definitely saves money over spending tens of thousands of dollars on products that may or may not sell.
Yeah. Love that. Love that approach. It's always like, can you start with like your minimum viable product, right?
Exactly.
Your MVP, just to get things going, get some quick feedback so that you're not buying 10,000 units and then like, oh crap.
Yeah, exactly. And there's been times where we've gone back and forth with like a graphic designer about like the main image on a product that we don't even sell yet. Spending a lot of money on those images, right? Just trying to make it work because we think it can be successful.
Yeah. What tools are you using to test images right now?
So like I said, we use Telemetrics and Intellivi are probably the top two.
Okay. Yeah. I know there's been PickFu that people have used in the past.
PickFu's good. Product Opinion. Those are they're all great. And they all have their own functions. But Andre from Telemetrics is like a good friend of mine. So I use his. And it's actually probably one of the cheaper ones for split testing. So I kind of use his probably the most for that specific purpose. I might use Intellivi more if I'm testing. If I'm testing other things too, or even just to confirm what's going on Telemetrics, right? I'll do that too. But I kind of use his. It's cheaper for that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally agree. So for our listeners, we have had Andre from Telemetrics on the podcast. We've had Matt Costin from Product Opinion on the podcast. Yep. So like, go back and listen to those because like those dudes, they know their stuff and how to optimize your images and really how to stand out. Because I agree with you, Brandon, like as it gets more difficult and more competitive, like you've got to be able to test before you even place your purchase order to make sure you're going to win. And it's because like PPC isn't the magic pixie dust when the product's here, right? Like,
right.
It's your decision, your success is already baked in at the time you place your PO for whatever that product is.
Yeah.
Your success or failure is baked in at that point.
Right.
You're not going to be able to resurrect it after the fact.
Well, also, I also think that you do all these tests and maybe you come to a conclusion and you launch the product and you might have 3 or 4 main images that you didn't like, right? That didn't work for the test for whatever reason, but you still have those, right? And if you're doing a launch and it's not going well, nothing's stopping you from going back and having those and trying those on the main image, right? And they might have, I'm a big believer in using split testing, but not using it as the end all be all and being like, this is, the gospel. Yeah. And a lot of people do treat it that way, but like saying like, okay, I've got these other images. Let's try one. I kind of like this one, right? But having those backup images kind of ready to go and not having to wait and go to a designer and wait a couple weeks or you have them ready to go. Right. And you can try those too. And that might save a launch where maybe you weren't going to be successful before. Right.
Yeah. I think that is very true as well. Like the software tools, they'll give you an idea of what's right. But I love like sometimes you got to have the Amazon customers vote with their money. Right.
Yes.
And that's where like the rubber really meets the road. So again, you take it for what it's worth, like try to dial it in, but like if it's significantly different, right? Like that, you can have more confidence in like, oh, wow, 80% of people selected this.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty good. But like when you're splitting hairs, like 55 to 45% for a couple images, you're like, this could go the exact opposite way.
Yeah, exactly right. And a lot of them don't focus on like what is statistically significant, and a lot of them aren't necessarily. The other thing I keep in mind is, I don't know if I've been following Scott Adams. He's like the Dilbert guy on Twitter for a while. And he has like a really good point that like whatever anything gets pulled, no matter what it is, 25% of the people just have the wrong opinion. and you should just disregard it. And you'll see like polls of like the craziest things, right? And it'll be like 75 yes, 25 no, or 23 no, right? Or something like that, right? And it's like, and it kind of holds true. So when it comes to these split testing, I kind of like disregard like 25% of the right. So if you get an 80-20, I'm like, that's bad. That is like you've lost. That's basically 100% no, right?
Yeah.
But if it's like 55-45, I'm like, okay, that doesn't mean anything, right?
Yep.
So I kind of like view it that way.
Totally agree. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Brandon, you have a legal background as well. I know you've also had to deal with some Amazon account health issues as it relates to copyrights, trademarks. Talk to me about the things that you've dealt with and how you've resolved those throughout the years.
Yeah, so we've had a couple of things come across for trademarks, for copyright, for people stealing our images. I think, first of all, being brand registered is obviously key to helping protect that. That's like the number one thing. But the thing that I really use is when it comes to contesting those is archive.org or our own website, because what it does is it has like a history of like the product page. So you can go there and see what your product looked like 5 years ago, whatever. And it kind of has that history. So when I contest things to Amazon to protect my copyright or my trademark, whatever that is, I say like, look, this was our page in 2016. It has the image on it, right? And they can look at that and be like, yeah, it does, right? And like there's really no refuting that, right? Taking, if you want to take screenshots of your products at different points in time, that's like a good idea too, right? But there's been times where it's just not possible, or we just don't do it. So like, I think that's number one to kind of help for fighting that. In terms of like when people have come after us for trademark violations, right, and they've come for patent stuff or things like that, right? The most important thing for the patent is to really look at when prior art was used, right? Because there's a rule, and I think it can't be a year prior to when the patent was issued, right? And if you can find that, then that patent is basically useless, right? And not only can you then go back to them and show them that, you can then come back to them for damages and say like, look, you've took down my listing on Prime Day. We would have made X amount of money. We're happy to take this to court or do whatever with it, right? We can do whatever we want. And we've been successful coming back and finding that prior art. And something I feel like I'm good at is like, I can do deep dives on Google and internet searches and things like that. And we found that prior art and been like, no, this patent doesn't make sense, right? And they kind of have to begrudgingly agree with you, right? So that's kind of like the best way to get out of that kind of thing.
Interesting. So you've had success basically, like even though the government has provided, the U.S. Patent Attorney's Office has granted a patent on something, but it was disclosed maybe earlier than what they told the examiner it was actually.
Yes, absolutely. And then another scenario that we had actually was we had worked with a company where they had us on the patent and we were dead to rights, and it was a great seller. And we're like, that's it, right? And we went to an attorney, and they worked out a profit share with them until we sold out of that inventory. And they were really happy with that, and we were really happy with that. And we gave them that profit share, and then we came up with we redid the product to not infringe on their patent, then patented ours. So now they have their patent and we have our patent, and basically no one can enter the marketplace for that exact product except for them and us. So it actually worked out in our favor that this even happened, because we didn't realize what we were doing then, that what we were doing was infringing, and we were going to kind of patent something else, and then we ended up patenting this, and it was like it all worked out. So it actually worked out in our favor. So I think IP is a really important piece of this, right? Even though you are going to have trouble and copycats and things like that, it's like really the biggest and most defensible thing you can have.
Yeah. Very smart. I like those strategies and your approach there. Brandon, as we begin to wrap things up, I love to leave the audience with 3 actionable takeaways. Here are 3 actionable takeaways that I noted from your episode today. Number 1, resilience is one of the most underrated skills that you can develop as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And the reason for that is we just heard Brandon talk about like various topics from legal issues, from PPC, from product launches to sourcing products. And the name of the game is this: over the last decade, things have changed on Amazon. And over the next decade, they will continue to change, and they are only going to get more difficult. A new book that I've been reading called Grit talks about the most successful people in life. It's just time in the game. That's all it comes down to. It's not that they're smarter than other people, but it's like they will keep going when the going gets tough and they don't give up. Brandon, you and I see this a lot in the Amazon space. The number of people that as soon as it gets a little tough, they then venture into the Airbnb market, or
exactly.
they go start another business. Now they're in the crypto, or maybe they're starting their own agency. And to be honest with you, there is nothing more damaging to your future earning potential than switching industries.
Yes.
If you've got a decade of experience in an industry, stay in it. And if you keep doubling down on it and you go through all the legal hurdles, the product launch, the sourcing, the tariffs, if you can stay in the game, you will be able to compound your returns exponentially another decade from now, just because like you keep going in the same direction.
Absolutely.
Whereas you're not digging in 10 different holes. Like one hole dug really deep goes a lot further than people trying to dig 10 different holes at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. I will add to that, first of all, I think that very well stated. I think if there is a problem, there's always a solution. But in terms of like, a decade of experience, right? And I think that's a really interesting point. And I don't know why I bring up Scott Adams again, but he also has another amazing concept, which he calls his like talent stack, right? Saying that like you can be, if you're in the top like 20% of, let's say, selling things on Amazon, but you're also in the top 20% of, let's say, knowing kitchenware, right? Those two things combined, you're suddenly in the top 0.01% in the world of knowing kitchenware on Amazon, right? And you can take that with just about anything. Like if you're a great photographer and you know Amazon, you're suddenly in the top 0.01% of people who can photograph products for Amazon because you know both things, right? And I think that's a really important thing to think about as what plays to your advantage going forward, even if you are switching, or are you staying the same? And most of the time, I think it means just sticking with what you're good at and using your skills, right? And like our conference is another example, right? I knew nothing about conferences. I was good at selling online. I learned about conferences. And I think we have one of the best conferences because we know about selling on Amazon and we know about putting on conferences now, right? And no one else knows that the way we do.
Yeah. Excellent. Very well said.
Thank you. Yeah.
So tip number 2, takeaway number 2 from today is go back to your optimizations. If you are in a cash flow constraint, right, you have kind of 2 options. You can either get really creative and get creative financing in order to launch new products, or if you're really in a tough spot and you don't want to pursue those creative financing solutions to launch new products, then the best thing to do is like work with your existing products, optimize their price, optimize the main images, bring them back to the studs, as Brandon mentioned, and begin adding on, because there's sometimes like there's a lot more room to grow, but because things have been easy, you just have kind of neglected things. And so now's a really good time to like make sure that you truly are the best in your niche or your market. And that comes through optimization.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
My third and final action item here is to always be launching. So as Brandon talked about, what's his plan for 2026? I hope to launch more products. I got a whole pipeline of products ready to go. And that would be my encouragement to all the listeners. Like, you should already know the products you're launching in 2026 and even into 2027 at this point, because that is your best growth lever. It's the way that you combat the overseas competitors that try to copy you. And if you can do what Brandon has talked about today, which is like finding and differentiating yourself with whether it be design patents or actual utility patents, like that's how you create a moat that compounds for the next decade. So those are my 3 action items. Brandon, anything else you would add? Or that?
Yeah, I would just say when it comes to launching, I think one way to think about it is that competition is always changing, right? And if there's something that's successful, there's always a million competitors, right? One of our products, we were like the first ones to launch, and now there's about 30 people doing the exact same thing. And if we had just been complacent, we would have just lost market share and died. And that would have been the end of our business, right? When you're launching, you're looking at new niches, at new products, at new optimizations that like maybe don't exist when you were doing it last time. And you can find edges that are new, right? Versus old, which is what your old products are, right? So I kind of think of it as like you're looking at the product's life cycle, right? And as you go farther along, maybe the sales drop a little bit. But if you go over something new, that's the hottest, newest trend, right? And kind of look at it that way, and not just like, yes, every launch is a lottery ticket, but like you're also like optimizing towards 2026 versus optimizing towards 2018.
Love it. Love it. Really well said there, Brandon.
Thank you.
All right, Brandon, in 60 seconds, here's the lightning round.
Okay.
What's been the most influential book that you've read and why?
Ooh, most influential book. Oh, man. I think the deep work right now, Cal Newport, has been what I've been really thinking about, trying to get away from my phone completely. Yeah, that's probably number one.
Excellent recommendation.
Yeah.
All right, number two, what's your favorite software tool that you've been using?
Ooh, favorite software tool. So, I'm going to give a shout out to a new tool that nobody knows about yet, just because I think it's really interesting, and that is Flowin.ai. It's really cool, and it does a lot of interesting stuff with listings and listing optimization that no one else is really doing yet. And I've been playing around with it and getting some really interesting insights.
Flowin.com?
Flowin.ai.
.ai.
Yeah.
Flowin.ai. Awesome. Always on the lookout.
They were interested in
cool
sponsoring
tool.
our conference, and I started talking to them, and I looked at this tool, and I was like, oh, I got to try this, and it's been great. Yeah, it's really cool.
Awesome. Love that. All right, final question here. Who is somebody that you admire or respect the most in the e-commerce space that other people should be following, and why?
So the smartest person I have met in ecom is probably Jabran Niaz of Utopia Deals. He is like the largest seller, I think, in Amazon, maybe outside of like there's like 2 or 3 ahead of him. But like they're $1 billion company. He's like the largest exporter from Pakistan. He is incredible. I've never talked to him and been like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, or like, I'm like taking notes as furiously as I can. There is no one smarter than him, in my opinion, in all of e-commerce. And he doesn't come out much. He doesn't talk much. We had him at Innovate one year. Like he is easily the smartest person.
Love it. He is definitely a great brand to be following. They have built something incredible.
It's incredible. Yeah.
Well, Brandon, it's been an honor having you on the podcast today. And
Yes.
Definitely we want people to go check out Innovate coming up in October there in New York City. Great
Yes.
conference.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And I created a custom coupon code for you guys too. You use code Hadley, you get to save $100 off a ticket. So
All right, there you
Yeah.
go. See, that's what you get for staying till the end here.
there you go. Yeah.
Got we saved you $100 today. So
Yeah.
use definitely sign up for Innovate. Go there in October in New York City. I will be there, and save $100. Use coupon code Hadley. And Brandon, looking forward to it. Thanks again for your time today.
Yeah. It's great being here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening. Visit ecommbreakthrough.com for more information. If you've enjoyed today's episode, the best way you can show your appreciation is by clicking the subscribe button and quickly leaving a review. See you again next time.